I thought he was my savior. But I didn't know I was just a step in his plan. My name is Monica, and I'm 40 years old. A few years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I had just pulled myself out of a messy divorce that left me emotionally drained and financially insecure. I was raising my daughter alone, managing 2 part-time jobs, and constantly trying to prove to the world and myself that I could survive without a man. And just when I least expected it, Nathan came into my life. He wasn't loud or flashy like my ex-husband. Nathan was calm, intelligent, soft-spoken, and incredibly attentive. He listened when I talked. He asked questions. He remembered the little things I liked. For a woman who had been ignored and dismissed for years, that kind of attention felt like water in the desert. We met through a mutual friend who assured me, Nathan's one of the good ones. He's been through his own heartbreak. He gets it? And from our first conversation, I felt that connection. He knew about loss, rebuilding, loneliness. We talked for hours the first time, and something in me, a quiet, hopeful part one thought was long dead, began to stir again. He was a financial advisor, and he had this calm confidence that made me feel safe. For the first time in years, someone was taking care of me instead of me always being the one carrying everyone. It felt new. And I liked it. Within a few months, Nathan and I were inseparable. He met my daughter, Julia, and was patient and kind with her. He didn't try too hard, which I appreciated. Julia was still healing from the mess with her father, and Nathan respected her boundaries. I could feel the walls inside me slowly starting to fall. Eventually, Nathan suggested we move in together. "We're already spending every day together," he said with that soft, persuasive tone. "Let's build something real." So we did. At first, everything felt right. Peaceful even. He would bring me coffee in the morning, make sure Julia had what she needed, and constantly remind me that I deserved happiness. It was the kind of love I didn't know I was still capable of experiencing. But in hindsight, I realize now how perfect it all seemed. Too perfect, maybe. There were little things I brushed off. Like how he never wanted to talk about his past in too much detail. Or how he always changed the subject when I asked about his family. He'd just say, "It's complicated," and smile that warm, disarming smile. I didn't push. Why would I? After all I had been through, I wanted to believe that someone could finally be simple. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. And the cracks in our perfect world were closer than I ever imagined. Living with Nathan felt like the calm after a storm. He had a way of making everyday life feel effortless until small details started nagging at me like invisible threads pulling at a tightly woven fabric. It began with little things. He started coming home later than usual. Meetings ran over, he'd say, or a client crisis came up. At first, I didn't question it. He was a professional man. He had a demanding job. But I couldn't ignore how vague his answers had become. When I'd ask who the client was or what happened, he'd change the subject or brush it off with a kiss on the forehead. One Friday night, he forgot our weekly pizza and movie tradition with Julia. She waited up with her favorite blanket and her hopeful eyes fixed on the door. At midnight, I finally put her to bed. He walked in past 1 in the morning, smelling faintly of cologne, not the one he usually wore. "I stopped by an old friend's birthday dinner," he said casually, as if he hadn't missed something important. He didn't even apologize. That was when the first real alarm bell went off in my head. I told myself I was overthinking things. After all, hadn't he been wonderful to us? Hadn't he picked me up when I was shattered and shown me kindness I hadn't known in years? I tried to silence that little voice whispering in my mind, something's not right. Then came the money questions. Nathan handled most of the bills. "Let me take care of it," he had said early on. "You've done enough heavy lifting for a lifetime." I appreciated that at first. But slowly I began to feel shut out. I noticed he'd changed the password to our shared bank account. "Oh, I forgot to update you," he said. "I'll text it to you later." But he never did. A few weeks later, I asked again. He acted irritated. "Do you not trust me, Monica?" That one question made me feel small. Manipulated. I found myself apologizing when he was the one withholding information. That's what manipulation looks like sometimes. Not yelling, not slamming doors, just a shift in tone. A guilt trip wrapped in a smile. Julia picked up on it too. One night, she asked, "Mom, do you like the way Nathan talks to you?" I froze. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe it. But my 12-year-old daughter saw something I was trying to ignore. And still, I told myself this was just a rough patch. Was I being paranoid because of my past? Was I projecting old pain onto a new relationship? Or was I finally seeing who Nathan really was? I started keeping mental notes, times he was gone, stories that didn't line up, moments where his kindness felt strategic. But I didn't act. Not yet. Because confronting someone you love means you might lose the version of them you fell in love with. And I wasn't ready to let go of that illusion. Not yet. A week after Julia asked her question, I stumbled upon something that shattered whatever illusions I still clung to. Nathan had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. It wasn't unusual, he often worked late, but this time, he had walked away in a rush to take a phone call outside. His screen hadn't locked yet. I didn't intend to snoop. I truly didn't. But when I passed by, I caught a glimpse of an email subject line that stopped me cold. "Weekend plans. Can't wait to see you again, Red Heart." My heart stilled. My hand hovered over the mouse. Everything in me screamed to look away, but something deeper screamed louder. "You deserve to know." I clicked. The emails were from a woman named Renee. They were not business-related. They were not old. They were recent, filled with affection, memories of dinners and getaways, inside jokes and promises. He had been seeing her for months. All those late nights. The sudden change in Cologne. The forgotten family traditions. The defensiveness when I asked questions. I sat down slowly, the air thick around me. I wasn't angry yet. I was numb. But underneath that numbness, something stronger stirred. Clarity. For years, I had fought to believe I was safe, that this man, this calm, composed, charming man, was different. That he had rescued me. That we were building something real. But now I saw the truth. Nathan hadn't rescued me. He had replaced my wounds with prettier lies. When he walked back in and saw me sitting there, I didn't look up. I just said, "Who's Renee?" He froze. Silence stretched between us like a tight wire ready to snap. "Monica," he began, his voice soft, almost calculated. "It's not what you think." That's when the rage came. "Then explain it," I said, finally looking at him. "Explain the messages. Explain the dinners. Explain how I let you into my home, my child's life, my heart, while you were sharing pieces of yourself with someone else." He looked cornered, but still tried to regain control. "You're being dramatic." I didn't sleep with her. It was just emotional. Emotional. As if betrayal needed a physical act to be real. I stood up. "No," I said. This was a choice. You made 100 little choices that led here. And now I get to make mine." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I didn't break dishes or fall apart. I put Julia to bed, kissed her forehead, and stared at the ceiling until morning. And when the sun rose, I packed a bag, not because I was weak, but because I was strong enough to walk away. Let me ask you something. I faced Nathan's betrayal with silence, but walked away with strength. If it were you, would you have stayed silent or confronted him right away? When Nathan left that night, I didn't stop him. I watched him pack his things quietly, methodically, and walk out the front door like a man finishing a meeting, not ending a life he helped build. He didn't offer a word of apology. No anger, no regret. Just silence. And somehow, that hurt more than anything he could have said. I sat on the couch for a long time after he left. The house was eerily still. His absence wrapped itself around the furniture like a fog. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply sat. It felt like I was shedding a second skin, one I'd worn for years to keep the peace, to be the agreeable wife, the understanding partner, the woman who bent so Nathan wouldn't break. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar quiet. No sounds of him shuffling around. No half-hearted good morning. Just sunlight pouring through the window. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel dread pulling me back under the covers. I got dressed. I made coffee. I opened the windows wide. I took a breath. Then my phone buzzed, Nathan's sister, Lauren. We weren't close, but she asked to meet. Curious, I agreed. At the cafe, she looked uneasy, her eyes darting toward the floor. I need to say something, she began. I should have said it sooner. She told me stories I hadn't heard before. About the woman Nathan dated before me, the one he gaslit until she left the country. About the passive-aggressive comments he'd make behind my back at family gatherings. About how he used to joke that I'd never leave because I didn't have it in me. Each sentence hit like a slap. Not because they surprised me, but because I had felt them all, just never dared to speak them out loud. Still, something shifted in me. Lauren's words didn't break me. They validated me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't ungrateful or difficult. I was just a woman who had given everything to a man who believed that love was a power he held over me, not something we shared equally. Later that evening, I pulled out an old box from the back of the closet. Letters I wrote but never sent. Photos I'd tucked away. Pieces of myself I'd buried to make room for someone else. And I began the quiet work of becoming whole again. I signed up for a ceramics class I'd always been curious about. I rearranged the furniture in the living room. I called my sister, the one I hadn't spoken to properly in years. I wasn't healing in big, dramatic gestures. I was healing in the stillness, in the reclaiming. I wasn't sure where this would lead, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being alone. Because I was no longer empty, I was becoming me again. The weeks that followed were filled with strange contrasts, moments of grief tangled with sparks of freedom. I cried over the life I thought I had, but I also caught myself smiling at the smallest things. The taste of coffee in the morning. The way my bedroom looked now that I had rearranged it to my liking. My home was finally mine. I didn't hear from Nathan for a while. But then, like clockwork, he started sending short, carefully worded texts. Hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything. I left a few things at the house. Can I swing by? He wasn't reaching out because he missed me. He was checking the temperature, seeing if the door was still open. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on building something for myself. I started journaling again, pages filled with raw honesty I hadn't dared express for years. I found myself writing things like, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I deserve more than breadcrumbs. I don't want to shrink anymore to make someone else feel bigger. Each word I wrote felt like another brick in the foundation of the woman I was rebuilding. I reached out to my old friend Claire, someone I had quietly distanced myself from during my marriage. She invited me to a weekend retreat with other women, some single, some divorced, some simply seeking. I hesitated, but said yes. That weekend changed me. We shared stories around a bonfire, laughed over wine, cried without shame. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's wife or ex-wife or emotional burden. I was just Linda. And being just Linda was enough. One woman told a story about how her husband left her after 30 years. Another spoke of starting a business after her divorce. I listened, I learned, and I felt less alone. That retreat reminded me of a truth I had forgotten. Women who survive heartbreak aren't weak, they're warriors. Not because they never fall apart, but because they choose to rebuild piece by piece. When I came home, I opened my laptop and updated my resume. Nathan had always made me feel like I couldn't succeed on my own, like I wasn't tough enough for the real world. But that was his fear talking, not mine. I applied for jobs in nonprofit work, something I had always dreamed of doing but never pursued. 2 weeks later, I got a call for an interview. I stood in front of the mirror that morning in a simple navy dress, hair pulled back, no makeup beyond mascara and a soft lip color. I looked older, wiser, and steadier. And when I said my name aloud, it sounded strong again. I wasn't the woman Nathan left behind. I was the woman who had finally chosen herself. The interview went better than I expected. I sat across from two women who asked thoughtful, genuine questions, not just about my work experience, but about who I was. For the first time in years, I answered without filtering myself. No pretending to be less ambitious. No shrinking to seem more agreeable. Just honesty. A few days later, I got the job. I was going to be a community outreach coordinator for a nonprofit that helped women transition out of abusive relationships and start new lives. When I hung up the phone after accepting the offer, I burst into tears. Not because I was scared, but because I finally felt like I was becoming the woman I was always meant to be. Of course, life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills still had to be paid. The occasional ache of loneliness crept in, especially at night. And Nathan, like a storm that wouldn't fully pass, continued to appear. One evening, I found him parked outside my house. I stepped outside, calm but firm. "What do you want, Nathan?" I asked, arms folded. He didn't look angry. He looked lost, like he couldn't quite believe I had moved on without him. "I miss you," he said. I made a mistake. It was the moment I used to dream of. For years, I had fantasized about him begging me to take him back. And now here it was. But it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like closure. "I know you did," I said. "But I didn't." He looked at me like he didn't understand. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he never would. I turned around and walked back into my house, not slamming the door, but closing it gently, permanently. And you know what? I didn't cry afterward. Not a single tear. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began preparing for my first community event. I was creating a workshop for women who had lost everything: homes, money, self-worth, but were ready to rebuild. I was no longer surviving. I was living. And somewhere deep down, I started to ask myself something I never dared to before. Was Nathan ever really strong, or did I just believe he was because I was too afraid to believe in myself? What do you think? Have you ever mistaken control for strength? Have you ever believed someone was powerful, only to realize, much later, that the real strength had been yours all along? I'd really like to hear what you think in the comments. The first workshop I hosted was in the basement of a local library. I expected maybe 5 women to show up, 10 at most. Instead, more than 20 arrived. Some came with babies on their hips, others with quiet eyes and tired shoulders. But all of them came with one thing in common: they were ready. I stood in front of them and shared my story, not the polished version, but the raw one. I spoke about losing everything I thought mattered, only to realize that what I truly needed had been inside me all along. It wasn't just a workshop. It was a room filled with women rediscovering their voices. Afterward, a woman named Carmen came up to me. She was trembling slightly, holding a crumpled tissue in her hand. "I haven't told anyone this," she said, "but I think I'm ready to leave him. You helped me see that I don't have to be afraid anymore." I placed my hand gently over hers. "You don't," I whispered. "And when you do leave, you won't be alone." That moment, that connection, meant more to me than any paycheck I had ever received. As the months passed, I began partnering with shelters, schools, and even local police departments. What started as one workshop turned into a program that began spreading across the city. I was invited to speak at events, on podcasts, even on the radio. But I never stopped being the woman who remembered what it felt like to be invisible. Nathan faded further into the background. Occasionally, I'd hear from mutual acquaintances that he was struggling to keep clients, or that his business wasn't what it used to be. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His fall was never my victory. My own rise was. There was one final moment that brought it all full circle. At a fundraiser gala, I was standing near the refreshments table when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around, and there stood Mrs. Hanley, the same woman who had once told me to quiet down and know my place. She looked older, a little softer. "I've heard about what you're doing," she said. "It's impressive. You've come a long way." I smiled. "Thank you. I have." She nodded slowly. "You always had it in you. I just didn't see it." I looked her in the eyes. I did. That night, I drove home with the windows down, the cool air brushing against my cheeks, and a calm settling deep into my chest. I hadn't just survived Nathan. I hadn't just escaped the silence of my past. I had built a life louder than anyone ever gave me permission to dream. I once believed that my worth came from being agreeable, quiet, and supportive, from molding myself into what others needed, especially men like Nathan. But I was wrong. Strength isn't about how much you can endure in silence. It's about how loud you're willing to be when everything tries to silence you. Today, my calendar is filled with community meetings, mentorship circles, and emails from women asking for guidance. Each message feels like a thread in a web I never imagined I'd build, a network of resilience, truth, and sisterhood. Not long ago, I received an email from a woman in another state who had heard one of my talks online. She wrote, "I played your words on repeat for days. You helped me leave a man who made me forget who I was. I remembered myself because of you." I sat with that email open for almost an hour. Not because I needed the praise, but because I remembered how alone I had once felt. How hopeless. And now that loneliness was being replaced by the voices of women who were finally standing up, just like I had. I never got an apology from Nathan. No message of regret, no admission of guilt. And that's okay. Closure never came from him. It came from me, from the day I chose to stop asking for permission to be powerful. To the women listening now, I want to say this. You are not too much. You are not too loud. You are not too ambitious. You are not too late. And no matter who has tried to shrink you, whether it's a partner, a parent, or society itself, your voice still belongs to you. When I walk into rooms now, I don't carry the weight of needing to prove myself. I carry the stories of every woman who once whispered in fear and now dares to speak in full volume. This is who I am now. Not someone who was broken and put back together, but someone who built herself anew, brick by brick, voice by voice. And if you've ever been told to be quiet, to shrink, to stay in your place, remember, the place where you belong is wherever your voice leads you. If stories like mine remind you of your own journey, or of the strength you've had to summon, please take a moment to like this video. It helps other women, just like us, find their way here. And if you want to keep hearing the voices of women who have endured, fought, and risen again, subscribe to this channel. You're not alone in your story. We rise together.